We all know the drill. Sanctuary is peak, Concordia is peak, Sanctuary 3 sucks, and New Haven is...
Hey, you see my gun?
Yeah, New Haven's pretty cool. I love hub worlds. Some of my favorite video game memories are of just me making my own fun in hub worlds, and Borderlands is no different. This is important to me, and because it is, I thought it would be fun to draft my own ideas for a Borderlands hub world. What's going on? I'm Cashew, and, well, you know what we're doing. Let's just do it. Let's go. Okay, starting off, I want it to be a city. Hub worlds always work way better when it feels like a more real, lived-in place, and a city is how you do that. Sanctuary from Borderlands 2 is a good example, with lots of different buildings you could go into, and a lot of NPCs just walking around, as well as the named NPCs, which usually have a few side quests to give out. As a case study for what I don't want, we'll look at Sanctuary 3 from Borderlands 3. Even though it has really good hub world music, the interior of Sanctuary 3 is very cluttered, and despite it being smaller than the other hubs in the franchise, it's also way harder to navigate. Something that is inevitably discovered by every player when the game asks you to go from the bridge to the drop pod, which are as far away from each other as they possibly can be. Fun fact, I turned my first ever Borderlands 3 character into a speed-focused infiltrator Zane build just to make this hub quicker to get through. You may think though that it's necessary for the hub to be a spaceship again, since planetary travel is now a pretty big part of the story, but this can really just be negated by having a ship garage in the town. From there you can select your ship and it will open the galactic map. Problem solved. But since we're already talking about it, let's get into the main meat of the hub, the building. Building on from what I was just saying, we'll start with the garage. In Borderlands 2, there was one, but it was completely useless. Now, to actually give credit where it's due, Borderlands 3 did do it better by letting you spawn your car in and test different parts combos, but it's still far from what it could be. To actually give the garage juice in this new hub, you'll be able to spawn vehicles like in Borderlands 3, but you can also purchase new car parts and skins from Ellie. I have no idea why this has never been a thing. There are so many car skins in Borderlands 2 in the pre-sequel, and never have you been able to buy them outside of getting quote-unquote lucky at a gun vendor's item of the day. Being able to make your car in the garage would also lend itself extremely well to making car presets so that you can use whatever parts you wanted without having to individually select the parts every time you spawn a car at a catch a ride. I'm one of the only people I know who was actually really excited by all the unique car parts you can get in Borderlands 3, but nowadays I'm just spawning a default Cyclone every time, because that's what's the fastest, and the spawn the previous car button sometimes just doesn't work and gives you a default one anyways. You should also be able to customize the look of your ship, because even if it's only in loading screens, it would go a long way to make your playthrough feel unique to you. And also, I really like Ratchet & Clank 3 and I did it there, so I mean, you know. Next up, we got Moxxi's bar. There have been many iterations of Moxxi's in all the games, and between them, they're all quite similar. The bar usually consists of a bunch of NPCs, slot machines, and a tip jar that can reward you depending on how cooked you are, on how much you decide to give Moxxi. These are all good and should return in my opinion, but one of the things that I've always wanted in Moxxi's are mini-games. I think this stems from watching the two guys play darts in Borderlands 2 for ages. I just have this burning desire for Borderlands darts. Gearbox, give it to me, please. But not only that, I feel like you could add maybe more gambling games, like playing poker with Claptrap as a reference to how he was in Poker Night 2, with a head or gun skin being the bounty. You could even, if it's still canon, and I'm not saying I want it canon, but you could include Vaultlander battles. But like, hear me out. Obviously, if they were to do it again, I would want way more gameplay than just pressing a direction and mashing A. But I do like the idea of finding different collectibles that you can fight. I mean, as it stands right now, the lore makes no sense at all by having Marcus make figures out of heroes, his friends, and his world's version of Hitler. But with a few retcons and fleshing out of the gameplay, maybe there is something there. I also wouldn't be opposed to bringing back the cocktail buffs from pre-sequel. For those who don't know, you could pay way too many moonstones in the pre-sequel to get a timed buff in the form of a funny named drink. You got the lemon lime and bullets, Rick's fist, and my personal favorite, I guess, the gargle blaster, I guess. I never really use these, mainly because the effects from their buffs go away if you decide to save quit out of the game, and that just doesn't really jive with how I play. The only other thing I can think of is to add a jukebox, acting as the game's sound test, or at least letting you play songs out of the soundtrack that you've discovered. But yeah, Moxxi's is a mainstay, and I wouldn't change that much about it. Now, this next building might be the most important. Borderlands is about guns, so therefore the gun shop should be pretty important. Wrong is what you would say if you were any of the Borderlands games, because the stores have never been any good. Unless you're playing Borderlands 3 after that one update and it's literally only legendaries from the vendings, but that's not really what I'm saying. The store should be more than just a front for the vendors and even the SDUs. There should be displays, a way to test out the guns before you buy them, a shooting range, a way to get refunds. Okay, maybe not that one. But the layout of these stores could be so cool. Maybe if you buy enough guns from Marcus, he'll give you a hint on the map to an enemy that can drop a legendary. It would also be awesome if there was a Gunnopedia that you could access and fill out. Kind of like an in-game version of Loot Lemon outlining drop rates, sources, stats, special effects, and the possible parts and elements. Most of what I'm saying here should also go for Dr. Z. There should be shield and class mod displays along with a more pronounced item of the day. The item of the day should either be a low rarity gun on sale or a high rarity gun such as a purple or legendary selling for full price since they aren't seen as much. I think there should also just be like a reason to go into the stores outside of the vendors. So I think everything that is in the store should be cheaper than in the vendors. Also in all these hubs you have Crazy Earl, who starting in Borderlands 2 sells the storage deck upgrades for your ammo capacity, and in Borderlands 3 ditches that to mainly focus on cosmetics, also giving you a way to repurchase quest rewards on level. Earl exclusively deals in Iridium though, the game's secondary, more rare currency. He also has the Anointment reroll machine, which is known in the Borderlands community for being absolutely awful with how expensive one reroll is worth. I think Earl can largely stay the same as he was in Borderlands 3, but the quest rewards vendor should be able to be accessed just from talking to Earl. There's no need to have a vendor to the side of him. But I don't really know what should be added to Earl's shop now that his main reason for existing has been removed. SDUs in my opinion were better when you got them from Earl, but if it's not changed and you still get them with money, then yeah, keep it how it is. A problem that's always been stuck with Earl is that Iridium is sometimes just kind of hard to get. So why don't we have Earl give out bounty mission side quests that reward you with Iridium? Sort of like a lootogram hunt in a random map. But when you bring it back to Earl, he'll open it and inside will be a bunch of Iridium, and if you're lucky, maybe a unique item, I don't know. Something that I've always liked in games in general is when completing a side quest, the quest giver will go back to the hub world and open up a shop or something. I would love to see more small stores open up around the hub, specializing in different items, whether it be relics, Oz kits, melee weapons, room decorations, or the return of mechanics such as the grinder or anointment reroller. Of course, we also have the player's room like in Borderlands 3. I think they did it great in that game, and the only notes I have is maybe a little more customization, with maybe like you can move the directions around yourself. And we also really got to sort out the bank. If the bank is going to again act as both the stash and the storage, it needs to have a way to sort out the stuff individually from the characters who put them there. I cannot stress how annoying it is to try and find a Passover gun from another character when just getting this wall of items. A problem that is admittedly made worse from arms race guns, and also me being too lazy to sell them and just kind of keeping everything there because the capacity for the bank is huge. Going back to the building at hand, it doesn't really matter if it's a house or if it's just a room, but I've always liked the idea of like a hotel. You open the door, it's just an elevator. Depending on what character you're playing, it will instantly take you to a specific floor, which will be your character's room. A really cool thing though that they could add to this is to have an option to view your friends' rooms from this elevator too. This being if they decide to go down the road of giving the player way more customization, which, you know, it's not a deal breaker, but it would be nice to have. And those are almost all the buildings I want to talk about. Before we get into the last big one, I'm just going to go rapid fire for some of the more self-explanatory ones that should be included. Hamlock's place for crew challenges and Beastopedia, fingers crossed, right? A place for Maurice to host events, Claptrap's place, a research lab where Tannis hangs out, and of course, a main head of operations that is quick to get to from the spawn. But the last big one I wanted to talk about is the Underdome. Listen, back when I first played Borderlands 2, all the characters would talk about the Underdome and how sick it was back in the day. With me playing Borderlands 2 first, I had no idea that this was a complete lie and the Underdome was actually an example for what Hell on Earth could look like. But even despite me now knowing this, my desire to see a rebuilt Underdome is stronger than ever. In Borderlands 2, Moxie talks about how Jack blew up the Underdome and then Jack was rebuilding the Underdome, then Moxie sends you out to blow up the construction of the new Underdome. But at the end of that whole wacky saga, Moxie says that she can finally start to rebuild the Underdome herself, and that got me excited. Borderlands 3 then dropped, and then the hub was a spaceship, so that was not really going to help, but it was also nowhere to be seen on the ground. It was just sort of forgotten about. In Borderlands 4, I would love if we ditched the Circles of Slaughter and returned to the classic arena gameplay. I've actually already talked about wanting the Underdome back in my pitch for Borderlands 4's endgame video, but for those who haven't seen it, here's the Cliff's Notes. This version of the Underdome will be a Digistruct arena that changes the environment while you play. There should be different modes, including a regular 10-round gauntlet, a boss rush, a horde mode, a survival challenge that only ends when you die, and my personal favorite, a way to refire any raid boss you have discovered so you don't have to travel all the way to their posts every time you want to fight them. This also includes the ultimate Borderlands challenge, a raid boss rush mode, where you fight every raid boss back to back. If you are able to complete this challenge, you'll be rewarded with a lot of legendaries, as well as the final loot room having the highest drop rates for pearls in the game. If you want a more in-depth description of this, I'll leave the pitch video in the description for you. But those were all the buildings I wanted to talk about. But we're not done. We still got to talk about the layout. Like I said before, a big reason I didn't jive with Borderlands 3's hub was because it was hard to navigate. Everything should be easy to access and see from the moment you spawn in. And I don't think anyone can argue that the hub that does this the best was Concordia from Borderlands the Precinct. You spawn in at the center of town and immediately in front of you is a jump pad that can take you anywhere in the hub. Also, just from spawn, you can see all the important landmarks immediately. Want to go to Moxie's? Bam! Want to go to Nina? Bam! You want to go to the grinder? Fucking bam! So I definitely want to use this as a base for the layout. Borderlands 3 did try to sort of recreate this with Vestige in the Bounty of Blood DLC, but the jump pads didn't grant you any air control and everything was really far away from each other. Our town should have a big square where the bounty board and fast travel stations are located. In the center of the town square is a jump pad that you can change the direction of so you can go anywhere immediately. Now I don't really have a full layout in mind, but I think it's very important that the main HQ is located basically right in front of the jump pad so you can instantly talk to whatever character is driving the main story. I think it's also extremely important that there are hidden echoes and collectibles hidden around town just to always fucking around and climbing the buildings and stuff. It might also be a good idea to lay out the town in sort of 3 separate districts besides the square. First would be the market district. I kind of imagine this to be laid out with the big gun store and Zed's clinic being massive stores lining the walls. In the middle or in front of those stores will be a bunch of smaller market stalls and vendors that fill out with each new NPC being added, like I talked about before, after their respective side quests have been completed, giving a great reason to do side quests and repeat playthroughs. Next would be the residential district, which would consist of characters' homes, the player's hotel, and Maurice's events. Then finally, we have a sort of entertainment district with the Underdome, and close to that, Moxie's, which will be pretty big and like in Borderlands 2 will connect the other districts together, leading to the garage from the secondary door. But getting around the town shouldn't just be one jump pad though. I propose the use of zip lines or grapple points to get around easier. This incentivizes movement and exploration without just filling the street with clunky looking jump pads everywhere. But that is my dream hub world for a Borderlands game. Hopefully Borderlands 4 will have something even slightly close to this for my sake, because I had so much fun making this video. When I get into a part of these games I'm really passionate about, I can't stop myself from coming up with just everything I'd ever want. But sadly I do have to stop somewhere, and that being said, like the Borderlands 4 endgame video, I did go pretty overboard, and it would be so much more effort to make a reality than another Sanctuary or Sanctuary 3. I'm no game designer, I'm just a fan, and this was super fun to make. If you have any ideas for what you'd want to see in the hub, I'll be down to talk to anyone in the comments about it. But I'm actually just reading this new thing here, and it says if you enjoyed the video, you're actually legally obligated to like the video and subscribe, so fancy that, hey? But in all seriousness, thank you so much for watching the video, and let's do the channel member shoutouts. My channel members are JBH, who uses really out-of-date slang, but he pulls it off every time. His wizard as fuck, dog. Wesker520, who met the Pope and said nothing to them. They just busted the move breakdancing, and yeah, you know, the Pope joined in. Angel B, who gets all of their song recommendations by going up to random people and asking, hey, you know that song that goes do-do-do-do-do-do-do-do? And whatever song they say gets added to the playlist. Jimmy Scrimpy, who carved himself into Mount Rushmore. It's pretty small, but you can see it if you squint, like totally. Jaden H, who moonwalked into their job interview and just immediately told they were hired. I mean, it is part of the middle manager skill set. Handsome Frank 63, who has single-handedly stopped crime. Not a thing anymore. He did it all by himself. Good on him, to be honest. And Noah Rowland, who makes those Banjo-Kazooie nuts and bolts machines in real life and like drives them on the road and shit. Never thought I'd see the day. But thank you guys so much for showing the extra support. I really appreciate you. If you want to get a cool shout out like these guys, the join button is right below the video. But I would like to thank you so much for watching. We'll see you next time, man.